Hi, I'm Tony Bell, and here I want to talk about something I think is very interesting. Stop and think about your retirement. Picture an investment firm lobbying the government to unlock a 12.2 trillion pool of safe, stable cash, your cash, to throw into highly risky private investment. That's the shocking financial situation playing out right now with your 401k funds. This I got from my source, Brandon Irving, who I also known as Big A on YouTube. And the recent regulatory changes allowing high risk alternate assets like private equity and cryptocurrencies into your 401k. Retirement plans represent a significant development in retirement investing that fundamentally alters the risk of landscapes for American savers. This isn't just dry policy, it's a huge shift that affects the security and growth of the money we all plan to live in and live on when we get old. Because we dug into the official documents from the Department of Labor, financial news reports, and expert commentary, in which I could hopefully tell you and make you understand exactly the new rules and why they matter to you. First, we need a quick review of what the 401k is and why it is considered safe compared to other investments. Second, we'll look at the specific policy changes that open the door to these alternate assets. Finally, we'll examine the major so- characteristics of these new investment options that appear more risky. To grasp the significance of this regulatory shift, let's look at the foundations we're talking about. The good old 401k that we all know. Safety and scale. The 401k has been America's primary retirement vehicle, built on stability and massive scale, having equity spread throughout many companies rather than high risk or high return stable income. And this, the 401k is an employer sponsored tax advantage account that traditionally held your pre-tax income in boring, safe, highly diverse investments like the S&P 500 index funds. This system has been remarkably successful, accumulating a truly staggering amount of money. And as you can see, this is the amount, which I must say is a lot more than you could fathom. Now, as of last year, this system was estimated to be valued at 12.2 trillion as seen. It's the financial backbone for the majority of American retirees. This is a huge preventive, previously conservative pool of money governed by the caution rules because they are a huge policy that needs to be managed carefully. Opening the door to these alternate assets and a sharp reversal of prior regulatory caution, a new executive order has suddenly brought these 401ks to higher restricted alternate assets. And with that, the shift has begun subtly, subtlety in 2025 this year in May when the Department of Labor has, or I could also say, reported by personality recited earlier guidance that had discouraged 401k managers from offering cryptocurrencies. This was quickly followed by a presidential executive order in 2025, which I got from Yahoo and that came out this year, which essentially greenlights assets like cryptocurrencies and private equities that weren't normally there into your 401k plans that, are, as you know, are not the most trustworthy because you can't see it or you can't regulate it the same way as you can a stock. So, understanding this change requires knowing the characteristics of these complex new assets, which differ sharply from standard stocks and bonds currently in most 401ks. Characteristics of alternate assets, such as they have higher risk, as I say, and less liquidity, which in short just means less buyers and more big buyers. So essentially, it's become a pool of small people rather than a pool of the majority. Now, let's look at a clear comparison. As you can see, these are the risks, and these are the dangers. And then we have our traditional 401ks. However, these new alternate assets, particularly provide private equity, often come with upfront fees, as seen, that are difficult to see and track, that can be disastrous for your total returns, according to Big A, which I cited from. Furthermore, these new investments also carry low liquidity, which means they are difficult to sell quickly, which ties up your money and makes it a poor fit for retirement vehicles where access might be needed. Now, we established the foundations of what your 401k really is and the major change that's going to happen, or has happened, I should say, because it's more in effect now than it was in May. And the key characteristics of these new investments, let's briefly summarize. We discussed the 401k system and the secure foundation of American retirement savings that have been around for about 80 years by now. Value at over $12.2 trillion as seen. I must bring that up. I cannot empathize this number enough. It is, I want to say, well, actually, I know it's about 10% of all money. We examined the recent policy change that opened these funds to alternate assets like private equity. We identified the core characteristics of these new investments, and namely high upfront fees and a lack of liquidity, which is something that is hard to avoid when getting to these new assets, allowing more danger. So, in short, the new regulatory allowance for these alternate assets introduce a new level of complexity into retirement savings, regardless of whether these assets provide greater returns. Understanding the risk and high profile and low liquidity is essential for all American investors navigating this evolving landscape. Thank you. Sign off.